understanding there's real like vision around something like this, where if I'm going to be the next, chain link, what's the story there, right? How do I get there? They inform the community to the nth degree about, why this makes sense, how you would utilize it, what's my hook. That narrative that you are crafting, if you will, is particularly important.
How important would you say is timing and effectively building a strong narrative?
That might be the most important kind of aspect to this. I mean, timing, understanding that the market is moving in a certain direction and there's a market need for something, right? That is probably one of the most important factors, right? Like if I'm an investor and I'm looking at something, what's the demand for this, right? There's if there's already a ton of companies in a specific space, you better have some differentiation at the end of the day, right? Especially in the token world where there's a ton of tokens out there, there's a ton of noise. What's my hook, right? To why this makes a lot of sense. And so that narrative that you are crafting, if you will, is particularly important. Like understanding there's real like vision around something like this, where, if I'm going to be the next, chain link out there, right? Which, I love that particular company, what they put together around oracles and so forth. Like they've built an entire network and ecosystem around that. If I want to be the next version of that, just in a different capacity for maybe another industry, what's the story there, right? How do I get there? What are like the potential kind of, milestones that I need to meet, like technically, operationally, financially, all of those things that still come from the traditional world, but just spun a little bit differently in terms of how I have to look at it, right? And some of the things we talked about today, right? And
absolutely,
if there's stuff like that, I can't be talked about enough in terms of making sure you pitch the right story.
I mean, when you look at Chainlink's story, I mean, their followers were practically militant, right? Like they really
the Chainlink
generated
Marines,
community,
yeah.
And it was
for sure.
Like, I mean, I'm tangential to that game of narrative and well, mainly positioning is where I'm coming from. The marketing end is the way that they positioned that business and then got people involved in that community was art, as far as I'm concerned. And
100%.
the motivational factors around, like, who are we, what are we trying to do, and how clearly and well that was communicated was excellent. Absolutely excellent.
They did a fantastic, and still do a fantastic job of like educating the community on the particular use cases. When they have different products that they're coming out there, they inform the community to the nth degree about, why this makes sense, how you would utilize it, what partners that it makes sense to collaborate with. Those guys do a phenomenal job. And, just full disclosure, they are a client of ours and I've known them for, several years now. And I still remember when we started with them, it's like, well, what is this again? Like, what? Really? Okay.
You're going to do this.
Right. We can do this. And they're like, we were talking about the value of the link token at that time and, their tokenomics and, how that works. And, hey, this could be something that's huge, but, they thought that through in terms of their allocation at a very early stage, in terms of what went to different folks in the community, investors, and, the founders, all those guys, because they wanted to make sure that, this thing is something that people are going to hold and utilize throughout the network, right? Not just something that people are going to take and just exit immediately off of. So they built their lockup strategy knowing that, and here they are today. And I love what they put together. So I'm right there with you on that one. That's big fans.
Do you feel that their strategic appeal, obviously product timing, they nailed that. But it was an idea at the inception, right? It was like what do you think was the, I guess, the inflection point or the lever that was like, okay, I get this, we're going to run with it?
Yeah, I think for them, well, those guys, I mean, you got some crazy like intelligence that's sitting in that brain power that's there is
Yeah.
incredible. And so not to say that you have to have a PhD to do this, but I think those guys, with that combined with some of the more strategic guys within the organization, they saw the long game here, right? They believed that you know the concept around the oracles and where the current market was with the blockchain technology at that time, and was in its infancy. They had the ability to say, okay, well, here's where it's headed, right? But the concept, or again, around building an ecosystem, right? And once they figure out that they're going to build an ecosystem, we've seen this in the past, like there's like the SaaS concept, right? Building a platform, right? The Salesforces of the world, if you will, like where I'm going to build a platform and people are going to come to this, and like once they centered around that idea, that the light kind of comes on, right? And it's understanding that inflection point of where you realize that this isn't like a couple $1 million project. This is $1 billion, multi-billion dollar concept where people can come in and build and develop on that platform. And I think that was like a key point for them, like understanding that the end game here, it's not even really an end game. It's just the long-term strategy of building out an ecosystem that everyone can be a part of is something that I think is got a defining moment for those guys at the end of the day.